Gloria Gray, Director Scott Houston, Director Harold Williams. Here. Ezzy Alvarez.
Oh, we do not have a quorum for purpose of voting.
That is correct. And since a quorum of the committee and the board are not present within the jurisdictional boundary of the district, which is a requirement of the Brown Act, the meeting will move forward as an informational meeting only, and no action will be taken.
Fine. Is there any public comment?
We have not received any requests for public comment.
Do you have any presentations?
Staff has no presentations.
There is no item on the action calendar, so let's go to the information items.
Yes, thank you very much. This first item is 6A. It's a quarterly safe clean water update. And for this presentation, we have Matt Vay, Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development.
All right. Thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, Director Deere and Williams. The Safe Clean Water update begins on page 3 of the agenda packet. So just as a quick refresher, in 2018, LA County voters passed Measure W, which created the Safe Clean Water Program. The county of LA County generates roughly $280 million from parcel taxes annually to invest in multi-benefit stormwater capture projects and programs. That funding is divided into municipal, which gets half, regional 40%, and district programs 10%. West Basin represents the interests of our service area by serving on 2 of the steering committees comprised of local stakeholder agencies, municipalities, and community members. One is the Central Santa Monica Bay watershed area, which covers central and northern service area communities. That one's staffed by myself and Augustine Hahn from my department. And then there's the South Santa Monica Bay watershed area, which covers some of the southern service area communities, and that one's also staffed by myself and Tammy Hurley Hyde. I mentioned this at each quarterly update, but the Safe Clean Water Program website provides a really nice interactive map that displays all the pending and previously funded stormwater projects throughout the county. So before I go into a brief summary of each of the steering committee's activities for the past quarter, I just want to remind everyone that the county put a pause on all new infrastructure projects this funding cycle. Many of the watershed areas were approaching funding saturation over the last year and going into the next few years. And so because of that, there is a pause on the bigger projects that will happen for the next, at least for the next year. And we still don't know yet if it'll continue on into the following year. On the other hand, the smaller projects, with those being scientific studies and technical resources projects, were still accepted for new applications this year, although the July 31st deadline to apply for those has now passed. The summer is usually a slower period for the Safe Clean Water Program as it follows the adoption of the Stormwater Investment Program in the spring. And this year is kind of even more so due to the lack of new major projects. Starting with the Central Santa Monica Bay Steering Committee, 2 of the last 4 monthly meetings were canceled. However, at the June meeting, our committee reviewed the progress of a previous scientific study, which was a community garden stormwater capture project. We also received a presentation on the draft fiscal year 24-25 strategic outreach and engagement plan for the watershed area. You'll hear me talk about this SOEP several times during my presentation today. The committee also re-elected its co-chairs for the next cycle, which will continue to be representatives from LA Sanitation and the LA County Sustainability Office. In July, the committee once again discussed the SOEP and voted to approve it for the coming year. The committee also took the opportunity in a down year to discuss the concept of more comprehensive watershed area planning. This will be a topic and theme that will carry throughout the remainder of the fiscal year and into future years. Moving over to the South Santa Monica Bay Watershed Area Steering Committee, like the Central Santa Monica Bay, 2 of the past 4 meetings were canceled. In July, the LA County staff discussed watershed planning and the initial development of watershed plans as a more holistic approach to planning for this program, and how those plans will be included and layered into the overall safe clean water program in the future. County staff also conducted a workshop to discuss program goals and strategies for the next year. In August, the steering committee strategic outreach and engagement plan was presented and adopted by the committee. And like the other committee, we also elected our leadership for the new year, where we selected Greg Cadwallader, who I believe is on this call, to serve as the chair again. And Doug Kraus with the city of Hermosa Beach will be the vice chair. With the project submission deadline having now passed, the next few months of meetings will revolve around learning about any proposed projects that were submitted, those studies, and those technical resource program, as well as continued discussions about watershed planning and outreach efforts. Additional summary information on the meetings from the past several months can be found in the staff report. Now I'll talk a little bit about some of the outreach efforts revolving around the Safe Clean Water Program.
Give us the page references.
Let's see. I think I'm still kind of on that same area, like page 4, page 5. I might be on that. 5. Thank you. During the most recent quarterly update, there were some questions from some of our directors about what the county is doing to promote the Safe Clean Water Program and to explore how we as West Basin can further engage on these projects throughout our communities. So the first thing that I want to mention is the utilization of watershed coordinators who work with the county staff to develop and implement the annual strategic outreach and engagement plans. Those plans are developed and carried out at each watershed area level. However, there is a significant level of coordination between the different watershed areas. Both of the watershed area steering committees that we're part of have developed and adopted their respective plans for FY 24-25, and each of those plans is attached to this month's agenda packet. The outreach and engagement plan set annual goals and objectives for watershed coordinators, which includes soliciting and going after new stormwater projects, connecting with different communities with the projects that are going on in their neighborhoods, and then some general outreach and education functions. Both the Central and South Santa Monica Bay Steering Committee plans include connecting with the greater community, engaging to understand community needs, educating by raising awareness of the program at large, soliciting those new projects, and then sharing success stories, which you'll see if you look through those plans in the packet. In addition to county staff, the watershed coordinators are really kind of the worker bees of managing many of the activities outside of the projects themselves. So another outreach area that I'll touch on that's being developed is through the county's Public Education and Community Engagement Grants Program, which is a Safe Clean Water program that's funded through that district program allocation of 10% of the total funds. This supports education and community engagement efforts related to stormwater and urban runoff capture within the LA County Flood Control District's service area. This grant program is still in the early development stages, and it is expected to formally launch as early as this month. So that's something that we'll continue to track. The next outreach area that I'll mention is the Water for LA County, which is a countywide public outreach program. It's aimed at transforming county residents from passive water consumers to empowered and informed water advocates dedicated to sustainability and health for all. So this is an effort that's not focused solely on safe, clean water, but it covers drinking water, groundwater, recycled water, and stormwater. Water for LA County runs parallel to the LA County Water Plan, which you're probably familiar with. That's something that West Basin supports, that we've been involved in, and that will continue to be involved in going forward. As you know, it's an interagency partnership to help to envision a resilient and reliable water supply throughout LA County. The board of directors here at West Basin adopted a resolution in July supporting the LA County Water Plan. Our general manager has been involved in the development of the LA County Water Plan. And then I'm currently set to serve on the county's Regional Water Reliability Task Force. And then Augustine Hahn from my department also serves on the county's Communications and Conservation Task Force. So this gives us multiple opportunities to engage on county-wide water issues, including stormwater. And with that, outreach is kind of naturally one of the core tenets of those activities. I also want the directors to know that I've requested the county to provide a more detailed update of their outreach efforts at a future meeting. However, I'm still waiting to hear back on whether that will be something that's agendized here in the fall. The other way in which outreach occurs is through the cities where these projects are taking place. So in the cities of Gardena and the cities of Carson. So the outreach that the cities themselves are doing by the project consultants or contractors who are designing and building the projects. For example, last year in the South Santa Monica Bay, we approved a project at the or near the Torrance Airport. That project has included outreach by the city of Torrance, by the Peninsula cities, the project design firm, just to name a few. As this project moves forward, these groups will coordinate their outreach efforts to the respective communities and residents. We see this same model occurring throughout the county. In the central Santa Monica Bay, many of the projects are within the city of LA or some of the LA County areas. So Los Angeles manages many of those outreach activities in those instances, but it's something that we track closely as part of our involvement on these. That brings up another point that our involvement gives us access to county staff, to partner agencies, to watershed coordinators, nonprofit agencies, and other community members to discuss issues and to learn about their projects and programs, both past, present, and future. We've been able to host the monthly South Santa Monica Bay meetings at the Edward C. Little facility. We've attended outreach and education events with Heal the Bay and other nonprofits. We've conducted community tours at ECL, and all of those opportunities enhance our presence in the community on those issues. Also want to note that my department has started working with the public information team here at West Basin to discuss how the district approaches stormwater outreach in the future. This would include those projects that are in our service area, but also for the general program and watershed planning at large that's going to occur this year. My goal is to bring the directors some initial thoughts and possible strategies at the next quarterly meeting. Obviously, this year's a little bit of an anomaly and that there will be no new major projects. But in the meantime, we'll continue to be engaged in watershed planning and in the LA County's overall water planning activities. So with that said, that concludes my report, but I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any at this time.
Yeah, you know, it seems like we've gone from not being involved to really involved. So on the stormwater issue, that the only one that was really involved was the general manager. So how is that going to be going forward?
Well, obviously Matt and Augustine are doing a great job of covering those meetings. Our communities are extremely engaged. I think Matt mentioned that Doug Krause from the city of Hermosa Beach will serve as vice chair. So just the engagement from our communities is through the roof. And so being there, being a part of it is really providing West Basin with a lot of opportunities to partner up and find new opportunities for our cities. So
That's great. That is really good because, we were like for a long time absent from the stormwater issues. So now see it's you, and another you.
Yeah.
And so that's great. It's great. Yeah. All right. That's all.
We've seen the growth of awareness about stormwater. It's an issue now.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the next item, 6D. It's our monthly state and federal legislative update. And again, for this presentation, we have Matt Bay.
Thank you, EJ. The monthly state and federal ledge update begins on page 112 of the agenda packet. And I'll begin with the state legislative update, which the report can be found on page 114 of the packet. So to start off, I'll just mention that it's the end of the legislative session. It's officially adjourned now for the 2020 2023-2024 legislative session, happened on September 1st. And to recap, this session included more than 4,800 bills that were introduced for the past 2 years. It's about 2/3 of those being from the Assembly and the rest being made up by Senate bills that were introduced. There's more than 1,000 bills that landed on the governor's desk this year. He's still going through that big list of bills, and he has the next couple of weeks, he has until September 30th to sign or veto any legislation that's been sent to him. As any, additional major legislative efforts go forward, we'll continue to keep this committee informed as those happen.
Are there any pending water bills still waiting to be signed?
Yeah, there are a few, and I'll definitely talk to at least a couple of those later in my presentation. But before I do that, I'll move and just say that there's a special session that Governor Newsom called the end of last month on August 31st. This would be a special session on looking at gas and oil prices and the spikes in those prices that occurred, especially last year. I know it's gotten a little bit better this year, but they're trying to kind of nip that in the bud going forward. So Speaker Robert Rivas, who visited us at the plant a few months ago, and the Assembly, other Assembly members have scheduled their first full floor session for the special session on October 1st. They would need to conclude that special session by the end of November, because that's right before the next legislative session begins in early December. Again, the purpose of this special session will be to discuss and hopefully pass legislation that would seek to curb those spikes in gas and oil prices that have plagued California for many years. As I mentioned, especially last year when prices really went out of control as a result of some supply shortages. And I think there was some talk as to whether those were artificially induced shortages or not. So that's one of the issues that we'll be looking at. One of the co-authors of this bill is Assembly Member Isaac Bryan, who is part of our delegation. He represents City of Culver City and some of our unincorporated LA County areas. And while the Assembly is on board with the special session, the Senate Pro Tem McGuire did not officially gavel into the special session. Instead, he stated that he is happy to convene the Senate's special session if the Assembly passes the pending legislation. So essentially, he's saying that the Senate will support the measure, and he thinks that he can put together the votes to make it happen when the time comes. But so far, that's not the time. So the Assembly is expected to hold a hearing next week, I believe on September 26th, to consider the legislation that's been proposed for this. So it's a little bit of unfamiliar territory with only one house following the governor's call. There does not seem to be an enforcement mechanism if the Senate ultimately decides not to meet. And we can kind of see that there continues to be a difference in procedures between the Assembly and the Senate for how to work with the administration on these types of issues. So I will now get to some of the updates on our priority water bills. And there's a full report that can be found starting on page 118 of the agenda packet. But I'll just highlight a few of those with activities since the last committee meeting. The first one is SB 366 by Senator Caballero. This relates to the California Water Supply Plan. This bill did pass out of both houses and is on the governor's desk. This bill would set a long-term water supply targets and modernize the California Water Plan. This was a 2-year-long effort that took strategic coordination by the water industry alongside Department of Water Resources and the senator. West Basin has been very engaged on this for the last 2 years, so we're happy to see it on the governor's desk. We did join the most recent coalition letter that was put together by CMUA, asking the governor to sign the legislation. Had a lot of support on both sides, so we're really hoping that this bill ultimately gets signed by the governor. AB 2257 by Assemblymember Wilson. This is a Prop 218 bill that was sponsored by Aqua. This is also on the governor's desk, and it has been very supported by the water industry at large. Prop 218 is an issue that the water industry has been working on over the years. There's been different types of bills that have been put forth to be more beneficial to the water industry in setting rates. And this bill would establish a procedure where a ratepayer must exhaust all administrative remedies to contest a new or increased fee or assessment in order for that ratepayer to be eligible to bring a lawsuit contesting the fee or assessment. So just another kind of administrative hurdle that retailers have had to deal with for some time. And so this would go a long way toward helping that if it does get signed by the governor. AB 1827 by Assemblymember Papin, who's the chair of the Water Parks Wildlife Committee. This relates to higher consumptive water parcels. This also is on the governor's desk. And this bill would clarify that existing law allows a water supplier to impose fees or charges for property-related water services that include the incrementally higher cost of water service due to higher water demand, to higher maximum potential water use, and to projected peak water usage of parcels. This was the bill that was sponsored by Irvine Ranch Water District. Now for some bills that won't be moving forward. SB 1255, this is a bill that we've reported on for a few months now by Senator Durazo. This relates to the low-income rate assistance program. And while the water industry in West Basin certainly supports low-income rate assistance conceptually, the way that this bill was structured would have made it really burdensome on cities and water agencies. Could have hurt some of our disadvantaged communities. So it didn't get to a point where we were neutral or supportive of it. And so bill just did not go forward this year, but I would expect to see that issue come back next year for sure. SB 1110, there was a couple of bills. SB 1110 was one of them relating to the water use efficiency framework. This one would have delayed some of the timelines and helping retailers to come into compliance with it. So it was something that we tracked and could have been supportive of, but never really got to that point, and that one did not move forward this year. But again, I think it could potentially come back in the next session. Another one that we engaged recently on was with SB 1390 by Senator Caballero. This is related to groundwater recharge and flood flows, and those agencies and cities in the more northern parts of our state that can capture some of those big flood waters that occurred last year with all the rain and the snowpack that happened. This was a bill that Metropolitan was very engaged on. They were seeking to, maybe put some limitations on how much water some of those other agencies could take, because otherwise that water can kind of make its way through the system down here to Southern California. So they were engaged on it. We were engaged on it with them. However, ultimately that bill did not go forward this year. So I think our staff will be following up with Metropolitan to see if it's something that they're going to pursue again next year. And then finally, AB 1573, this was a bill by Assemblymember Laura Friedman. You remember last year there was AB 1572, which banned the use of potable water for irrigation on non-functional turf on CII properties. This bill was originally what we call a model water efficient landscape ordinance bill last year. It recently got basically gutted and amended into something new that would have banned the installation of irrigation systems on non-functional turf. I think it just got started too late, about a month ago when they started marking up new language. And so it didn't really have enough of a chance to make it through and get kind of the buyout that it needed from the different interests, including the water industry. So that bill ultimately did not pass out this year. Next, as we all know, we have an election less than 2 months away. And while there aren't many contentious races within our service area, there has been some recent media coverage about State Senate District 35, which is currently Senator Bradford's district. And this will pit former Congresswoman Laura Richardson against former City of Compton Councilmember Michelle Chambers. The primary results were very close for both of those candidates. And so, I would really expect the general election to be, again, very, very close matchup and evenly split between the two. Many of our cities and communities are represented by the Senate District: Carson, Regina, Hawthorne, Inglewood. So the outcome of this race will definitely be a new opportunity to work with a new member in the coming years. And then I just wanted to provide a couple last updates. One is on Proposition 4, which is the climate bond that our board took a support position on last month. Initially, it had looked like Metropolitan Water District was not going to take a position on the bill. However, following a committee action last week or 2 weeks ago, it didn't look like they were supported. The full board took up that measure, and they did adopt a support position on Prop 4 last week. Sorry, Tammy, if I'm stealing your thunder on that one. But with that said, I did just want to let the committee know that we reached out to the Metropolitan Water District to kind of see if they're going to be doing any kind of education ahead of the election. And at this time, at least, it appears that Metropolitan will not be doing any education on the proposed ballot measure, but we'll be certain to kind of follow up with them later on if that's still the case. And then regarding the water use efficiency framework, I just wanted to mention that so far staff has held one-on-one meetings with the city of Manhattan Beach and the city of El Segundo regarding kind of compliance and what to expect in the months and years ahead. We're going to be continuing to meet with interested retailers this fall with the city of Inglewood and the city of Lomita next on our list. And then we'll be kind of following up with that with the other remaining agencies that we have yet to meet. We're also developing our plans to utilize the funding that the board kind of bestowed upon us in this fiscal year to have for our retailer support, and also for the CII programmatic support that we intend to roll out this year to help our customers meet their targets and to begin complying with performance measures that are required of them. Also today, I read that the state is celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, which went into effect in 2014. This is not something that directly impacts us, West Basin, as we overlie an adjudicated basin. However, it certainly affects many rural and urban areas throughout the state, which have historically relied on groundwater pumping for their communities, for their agriculture, etc. And finally, I think there's some folks that may say that California has boring weather. However, last week we saw temps in some of our coastal areas up to 110. There's wildfires that are happening all over the place. And then you contrast that this week when they just reported that they're expecting snow to fall in some of the Sierra Nevadas above 8,000 feet. So I think you hear climate whiplash in the news, and that's definitely the case as we head into the fall months.
Actually, despite all that, we still have the best weather in the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that said, that concludes my state report. Either of the directors before I move over to the federal updates.
So thank you.
No thing.
Okay. Then I will now move to page 141 of the packet. And this month's federal report is a little on the light side since Congress has been on their summer break for the past month. They just reconvened back into session last week. And its top legislative priority at this time, something I feel like I say ad nauseum, but they're trying to pass a continuing resolution once again to extend funding for the federal government and its programs before the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. It's likely that any resolution will only extend funding into early December, leaving both sides, both houses to continue discussing an agreement on. Yes.
Hi, Director Gray.
Hi, Gloria.
Hi, I apologize to everyone for not being there in the start of the meeting. I'm sorry about that.
Well, we're on the agenda item 6A, or is it 6B?
B.
6B. If you just started 6B and Matt's giving a report on it.
Okay, thank you, Don. Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see, where was I? So yeah, so they'll be trying to come to an agreement on either an omnibus package, which is kind of all the bills into one package, or what they call multiple mini buses, which are smaller packages of bills. And this would all occur, which is during, a lame duck session that we find ourselves in. On September 11th, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Subcommittee on Water and Power held a hearing to discuss some pending water-related bills with the Bureau of Recs, Camille Towton testifying at that committee. And some of the bills of interest to West Basin include, one is the Help the Hoover Dam Act, which was introduced by Senator Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, which would provide $45 million for maintenance and operation for the Colorado River Dam Fund. There was also some Senate companion legislation introduced by our own Senator Alex Padilla, which would establish an interest-bearing account for non-federal contributions to the Lower Colorado River Conservation Program. Commissioner Towton discussed the Colorado River operating guidelines negotiations that you might have heard a little bit on last week at our caucus. That was 2 weeks ago, and expressed optimism in the conversations that the Bureau is having with the basin states. She also discussed ways that the Bureau of Rec has been using bipartisan infrastructure law funding for large-scale water recycling projects, and she specifically highlighted the importance of Metropolitan Water District's Pure Water Project and the benefits that it would provide to the state. On the topic of the Colorado River, last month, the Bureau of Rec announced that Arizona and Nevada would continue to have some allocation cutbacks this coming year based on the levels at Lake Mead. However, they will be maintained at what they currently are. There won't be any additional cuts needed from the states. This is in line with a level 1 shortage on the Colorado River, and that means that California will continue to be exempt from any mandatory cuts at this time. As you might know, there's been a slight rebound on the river the past 2 years, so that's kept us, California, from having to cut more than we would otherwise. And just one last thing I'll mention here is that Aqua and Water Reuse put together a coalition letter in support of the U.S. Army Corps' water supply mission. On August 16th, those two agencies co-signed a coalition letter along with the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, the National Water Resources Association, the National Water Supply Alliance, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, supporting the inclusion of the water supply mission within the U.S. Army Corps' core missions, as outlined in the House version of the 2024 Water Resources Development. This is something that we've talked to you about. We've asked for support on this. You've given us that support of that legislation. The addition of water supply as an Army Corps missionary would likely lead to more Army Corps projects involving water reuse, recharge, and reclamation. And as I mentioned, this legislation is supported by West Basin and will potentially benefit our Army Corps supported projects in the future. With that, I'm going to stop my report there. However, additional updates are available in the monthly BSA report in the packet. And with that, thank you again, and please let me know if you have any questions about federal issues.
Okay, thank you. Don, you want me to take over? You can finish if you like.
You can continue, the chairperson.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions?
Yes, done.
Here in McVern?
No questions.
All right, next item, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, this brings us to item 6C. It's our monthly Metropolitan Water District update. It begins on packet page 144. And for this presentation, we have Tammy Hurley-High, our Water Policy and Resources Analyst.
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, directors. So this report summarizes updates on recent activities at Metropolitan. And in addition, there are PowerPoint slides attached to the report as well. The PowerPoint slides begin on page 160 of the packet. It might help guide the updates in this report. So first off is update on the Pure Water Southern California program. This month, Metropolitan Board authorized an amended agreement with the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts. This will be for a shared implementation of the Advanced Water Purification Facility or Pure Water Southern California program. That original agreement was outlined in 2015, outlining the planning phases of the demonstration project. And then the initial agreement listed Metropolitan as being the agency to be responsible for most of the treatment facilities. And then later in 2020, the agreement was amended to initiate cost saving provisions, in-kind technical studies, and public outreach to support the environmental planning phase. So initially, the key treatment facilities under Metropolitan's scope of work in that agreement included the membrane bioreactor, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet with advanced oxidation process. So this amended agreement that they just approved, it documents a revised set of shared responsibilities, which align with each of the agencies' participation in the program. The sanitation district would now be responsible for the design, construction, and operation of the pretreatment nitrogen management facility, which also includes the membrane bioreactor process. So shared implementation of the project will result in cost sharing and other mutual benefits for both agencies. And in the future, an agreement will be planned to detail the responsibilities of each agency for the full-scale program. So that's the update for Pure Water. We can move on to the next slide. We have an update on the Bureau of Reclamation Conservation Program. And last month, the board authorized agreements with the Coachella Valley Water District, Imperial Irrigation District, Palo Verde Irrigation District, and the City of Needles. This will allow water conserved under Reclamation Conservation Program to be added to Lake Mead. And this covers conservation actions during the year 2024, 25, and 26. So previously, Metropolitan Board granted authority to forbear 3 of the conservation agreements, one each with Palo Verde Irrigation District, Bard Water District, and the Quechan Indian Tribe. So a total of 6 conservation agreements have been or are being developed in California under Bucket 1 of the Lower Colorado Conservation Program to help California conserve 400,000 acre-feet of water annually between now, starting in 2023 through 2026. So as you know, these actions are necessary because the Colorado River conserved by a higher priority user is available to the next. Because the program is to fund the conservation of the Colorado River water, the contractors need to agree to forbear exercising their rights in order to ensure that the conserved water remains in the Colorado River system rather than automatically becoming available to the next priority user. Metropolitan also authorized implementing agreement between the Imperial Irrigation District, the San Diego County Water Authority, and Metropolitan to include up to 100,000 acre-feet of water conserved. This would otherwise be transferred to San Diego Water County Authority and exchanged under the exchange agreement under Imperial Irrigation System Conservation Agreement with Reclamation. So now under this agreement, San Diego would be required to purchase an equivalent volume of Metropolitan supply, and Metropolitan General Manager would be delegated authority to execute these agreements with Imperial Irrigation District and San Diego regarding how much of the 100,000 acre-feet of water to include each year would be based on the water supply condition. So with these 3 additional programs, it is anticipated that Lake Mead's elevation will increase by about 10 feet. So that's it for that item. If we can move to the next item, the next slide, please. Regarding the ad valorem property taxes, the Metropolitan Board adopted a resolution to levy ad valorem property taxes at a tax rate of 0.00% of assessed valuation. So Metropolitan collects the property taxes to pay for debt service on its general obligation bond to pay a portion of its state water contract obligations. Between 2012 and 2024, the ad valorem property tax rate was maintained at the lowest rate, which was 0.0035%. So in April, earlier this year in April, when the Metropolitan Board adopted the biannual budget, one of the components was to increase property assessed valuation to 0.0070% tax rate. So last month, the board adopted a resolution adopting, levying this ad valorem property tax rate. Metropolitan staff and the board approved. This action is essential to Metropolitan's ability to meet its forecasted expenditures. The increased property tax rate will collect a total of approximately $330 million, which will be about $14 million more than the initial budgeted amount of $316.5 million. Okay, and that's it for that item. The next slide, please. So regarding ad valorem assessed valuation, so Metropolitan received their certified assessed valuation from the 6 county auditors. There is a detailed list on all member agencies' assessed valuation in the report as well. It's under attachment A, which is located on page 149 of the committee packet. But based on the auditor's information, certified assessed valuation for metropolitan service area totaled $4.6 trillion for fiscal year 2024-25. West Basin certified assessed valuation amount, that reflects a percentage increase of 6.3% compared to last year. So for fiscal year 2024-25, West Basin will have a voting percentage of 7.08, and that is an increase of 0.07% compared to last year. The West Basin voting entitlement will be maintained, holding 2 seats at the Metropolitan Board. So that's it for that item. If we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So regarding the board agenda look ahead, here's a few items that were included at the September committee meetings, which were held last week. And during the board meeting, all of these items listed here did pass. The first one is to authorize an amended and restated agreement, which I already mentioned earlier. The second was to express support for Proposition 4. And with respect to that item seeking a support position, the Metropolitan Board did have a public comment from Senator Ben Allen. So it was nice to hear from him. And the senator had described some background on this measure over the course of several years and how it was limited by financial and structural limitations. The areas for water, however, the 10 billion bond was the most that it could be. And it is an important step in the right direction, puts serious upfront investment with water infrastructure for this state. So Senator Allen also mentioned that it's the biggest portion of the bond is nearly $4 billion of the investment. And he expressed it would be important to have Metropolitan's collective voice in support of the bond and stated that the bond ultimately passed with strong bipartisan support at both houses of the legislature. And there are large portions of the bond that benefit the service area represented here in Metropolitan Service Area. So the Metropolitan Board did approve that. And then the last item the Metropolitan Board approved was to authorize the general manager to enter into agreements with entities in North Sierra, the Northern Sierra portion of the watershed to establish partnerships and forest health pilot investigations. This item was approved and more information on this item will be brought back to you next month on how that program is crafted. And so next slide, please. Yeah, so here's a look at the water supply update. Starting at the top is the Northern Sierra snow water equivalent. It peaked at 35.1 1 inches on April 1st, with 123% of normal. For the 8-station index, the Northern California accumulated precipitation indicates 47.3 inches and 90% of normal. Lake Oroville is at 78% of total capacity. And then the next row down below is for the Colorado River snowpack. And the snow water equivalent peaked at 17.2 inches on April 3rd at 115% of normal. And regarding rainfall in the Colorado River Basin, precipitation is measuring 25.4 inches or 98% of normal. For Lake Powell, the current storage level is 39% with 9.57 million acre feet. And for Lake Mead, the level is 33% with 8.52 million acre feet of storage. And the last row shows Metropolitan's local supply reservoir conditions. The chart in the bottom right corner shows historical allocations of water supply from Northern California for the state water contracting agencies between the years 1995 and 2024. And I'll just touch a little bit on this. For the current water year in 2024, DWR's allocation for state water project contractors is at 40% of the requested supplies. Last year in 2023, the state water project contracting agencies were allocated 100% of the requested supply. The last time that the state water project agency received 100% of the requested supplies was back in 2006. Prior to that, and back-to-back years of 2021 and 2022, the allocation was only 5%. In the early years of this chart, historically, the state water project contracting agencies received a cumulative 100% of the requested supply between the years 1995 through 2000. Currently, water supplies are exceeding the demand for Metropolitan, and Metropolitan continues to maximize the supplies in their in-region storage. So in conclusion, end-of-year storage supplies for Metropolitan are anticipated to end the year at a record-breaking 3.8 million acre feet. So that concludes my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Are there any questions? Don,
None.
Director Deere? Anyone else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is there a next item?
Madam Chair, that's all of the information items.
You go to the next item then. What's next?
We do not have any closed session items, and that brings us to item 8, director's comments and future agenda items.
Director Deere?
Yes, I want, for the record, that our weather today is better than yours in Texas, I'll bet.
I didn't hear you. What did you say, John? Director
Our
Deere?
weather here is better than yours in Texas.
Oh, well, it's kind of hot here. Director Williams?
No, thank you.
All right. And staff, thank you for your report today. I apologize again to staff and board for being late, but great to know that one person doesn't stop the show. So thank you very much for everything today. And that concludes this committee meeting. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.